What's up, everybody? Welcome back to today's episode from the Sports Sermon. I'm Jason Gandhi alongside Dylan Staggy. Just two of us today, and we are going to get into the Atlanta Hawks offseason, what's gone on, what we expect moving forward, things like that. We're going to have every team that you can imagine in the NBA, all 30 of them. We're going to have these exact same type of episodes. We're going division by division, so today's the Hawks. By the time you're listening to this, you should have the Heat, Hornets, Magic, and Wizards also up. So go check those out if you care about that division or those teams. But like I said, throughout the summer and going into the beginning of the fall, we're going to have all 30 teams in the NBA covered by us, me, Dylan, Dan, Zach, Michael, some variation of that. We are also doing this for the NFL and college football. So make sure you go check those out on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, almost. We're getting there. And so make sure you do that. SoundCloud, that's what I was forgetting. SoundCloud. But yeah, we're doing the Atlanta Hawks. Like I said, we're going to talk about the additions, the losses, what we think the teams still need to do moving forward, all that jazz. But let's get into it. The Atlanta Hawks made a coaching change this offseason. Mike Budenholzer left for Milwaukee. Lloyd Pierce steps in. Dylan, what do you see as the expectations for Lloyd Pierce and his staff year one?
So I think they've got to focus on two things. First off, the development of the young guys, especially Trey Young and John Collins. They're two biggest young stars with most potential on the team. Need to see progress out of those two in this first year. And two, the second thing the first thing that Lloyd Pierce said when he stepped in as the coach of the Hawks was that he wanted to install a great defense. So I think installing that culture into the Hawks and then seeing some progress on the court this season. Last year, I think they were 21st, the 21st best team on the defensive side. So seeing some progress there, and because that's the reason that they hired Lloyd Pierce. So I think developing the young guys and defense, two things that we need to see from Lloyd Pierce this year.
Yeah, I think the first thing you mentioned is kind of where I was going with was the development of the two guys, Trey Young and John Collins. I think Coach Pierce for year one, I mean, you can't look forward to the next year because you have no idea what their team's going to look like. Those are your two pieces, John Collins and Trey Young. John Collins looked really good in Summer League for the times he played, and Trey Young showed from start to finish what he is coming in as right now to what he could be. He looked really good a few nights ago against the Pacers, but in the beginning in the Utah Summer League, he really struggled. So kind of a tale of two different guys there with Trey Young. So for me, if I'm evaluating Coach Pierce and his staff, I just want to see what can these guys do and how can Coach Pierce and their staff develop them. If we see flashes of those guys being the building blocks for Atlanta, I think it's a job well done for Coach Pierce. If we see them struggle, then I think I don't know how many times you can restart the rebuild. So I think, yes, it's only year one for Lloyd Pierce and his staff, but it's a very crucial year one because you've got the two biggest pieces of your franchise moving forward, and you don't want to mess them up. I also was a big fan of Coach Budenholzer, so I'm kind of skeptical of the hire just because I thought Mike Budenholzer was the right guy for this Atlanta job.
Yeah, I mean, did he leave or did the...
It was a mutual agreement, which surprised me because I thought for sure the Hawks would try to retain him. Like, I get that he struggled. It's the same thing with the Magic that we talked about in that other episode. Is just like Frank Vogel and Mike Budenholzer don't really get a chance because you can't hold on to these guys for that long. But also when they come in, like their rosters are not very good, and you can't change your roster overnight unless you're a team that's got a big market and can sign a guy like LeBron. Like,
yeah, I mean, I like the move for Budenholzer. Like, he didn't want to go through this entire rebuild, and now he's at a spot in Milwaukee where...
Yeah, he lucked out. But I mean, when he mutually decided to part ways, I don't know, was the Milwaukee job open? I don't remember. I feel like it was an interim job, obviously.
Yeah. I think it was pretty much.
Yeah, I don't know.
They were searching for coaches.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought Budenholzer was a great fit from the Atlanta side of things because he knows how to build something from being in San Antonio. So, I don't know. I liked Coach Budenholzer a lot. I'm skeptical of the Lloyd Pierce signing. You seem a little more optimistic about it. Let's move on to the rookies they drafted. Like I said, they drafted Trey Young. They also got Kevin Huerter and Amaris Melvin in the first round this year. So, how quick should we expect a new era in Atlanta, and is Trey Young the difference maker for this franchise?
Well, I'm going to ask you, what do you mean by new era?
Well, we know it went from Damari Carroll, Al Horford, those guys, to now it's just been a rebuild. So is this going to be the start of the uptick again, where we see Trey Young start to get them back to their winning ways?
No, I mean, I think this year they're still in tank mode. They're still going to be trying for the top picks, because really they just don't have enough pieces yet. I mean, Trey Young, I like the pick. But he's a boomer bust pick, and John Collins. I mean, those guys are going to get you near the playoffs, even in the East. So I mean, for the Hawks, you just got to be patient. It takes multiple drafts to try and get enough pieces. And again, the development isn't going to be important too. If Trey Young and John Collins are going to be stars in 2 years, that's fantastic for them. But you can't just expect them to be that this year. So I think you just got to be patient in that aspect.
But is Trey Young the guy that can change his franchise? Is he a guy that in 3 years we're looking at him as, obviously, just because it's an easy comparison, the Steph Curry of the Warriors, where he is the start of this rebuild?
I mean,
start of all of it.
He's one piece of that. Even you look at the Warriors, Steph Curry is just one piece of the puzzle, be it a very important piece.
But there's a face to every franchise. There's a face to every team that's successful. Is Trey Young that face?
I think he can be. Now, I don't see him getting as good as Steph Curry. I mean, yeah. I think most people with a brain would say that.
Yeah, the odds are against him in that regard.
But he can definitely be an offensive superstar. I think the guy that you can maybe compare him to closer would be Isaiah Thomas. Maybe not exactly the same in their games, but just as a guy that is going to put up a lot of points on the offensive side, but his size is going to limit him on defense.
Yeah. So for me, I think Summer League can tell you a lot about Trey Young. I thought it was a perfect microcosm for how this next season upcoming might look. You look at the beginning, he struggled to get his shot off, he couldn't connect from deep, and he looked undersized. But as soon as he got that shot from deep cooking just enough, it opened up so many things. It opened up driving lanes, which increased his assists, and all in all just had him looking and playing smarter. He made better passes, better decisions. I expect that same thing in this season. For 90% of rookies, my expectation is show flashes of greatness, but also you're going to experience growing pains. If that happens, I think that is normal. Most rookies, besides the abnormal 2 or 3 out of every class, are going to struggle, but also show flashes of greatness. I think that's what Trey Young did in Summer League. I think that's what we expect to see this year. I think Trey Young and John Collins could be a really good start to a core, but I think we both agree that they need 1 to 2 more pieces in the draft, which could come as early as next year. If they do not play well, the Mavericks tank. They've now got 2 picks, maybe 1 and 6, and then you get a guy like Romeo Langford to pair up with Trey Young, and a guy like Zion Williamson to play that 3-4 position. Now that team looks a lot different with Trey Young, Romeo Langford, Zion Williamson, Taurean Prince, and John Collins. Looks a lot different than what they have now.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say 1 and 6. I would say,
because isn't top 5 protected? That's why I said 6.
Yeah, I mean that's
ideal. That's best case.
That's scenario. Ideal, but for the Mavericks, I'm projecting them like in the 10 to 12 range.
Really?
And then the Hawks.
You think the Mavericks are gonna be that good?
Yeah, I mean they have some veteran pieces, and they just added DeAndre Jordan. So.
I mean, I think the Mavericks will still struggle. I think they'll be a top 10 pick still, but.
All right.
Yeah. My last real question for you about the Hawks. This one's more just kind of like talk about their team and how it looks in general. They were pretty quiet this free agency. The only real big move was they got Jeremy Lin from the Nets last night. So, are there any moves you want to see them make more? And what can you really expect from the Hawks moving forward?
Yeah, so Jason, you just said that last night they made the move for Jeremy Lin. I actually wrote down my notes before that. And so I said the Hawks need to take in some salary and just get some more picks. And that's what they did in that trade. Unfortunately, those picks don't come until later. The 2023 right to swap picks with the Nets, and then the 2025 second-round pick from the Nets is what they got in exchange for taking on Lin's salary. But I like the Lin pickup. But now what you've got to do is you got to get rid of Schroeder. I mean, Lloyd Pierce, like I said earlier, he's trying to install a culture of defense in the Hawks, and Schroeder is, 1, not good at defense, and 2, doesn't want to be there. So I think you got to move him sooner or later.
Yeah, I definitely think Schroeder's gone. I think that's almost like a done deal. There's no way he can stay. They got Trey Young, Jeremy Lin. They've got other pieces. Like, I just do not see him in there. So I kind of look at what I see their starting 5 roughly being Trey Young, Kent Bazemore, Taurean Prince, John Collins, and Dwayne Dedmon. That's how I see their starting 5 somewhat looking. And from there, I just see a hole at the 3 because they're so young. The only 2 guys they really have at that 3 is Taurean Prince and DeAndre Bembry. Yes, they could stretch Bazemore to the 3 and have like Tyler Dorsey play the 2, but I think Bazemore stays primarily at the 2. So I think if they can trade or sign for a veteran 3 just to mentor that young group, that could be a good fit. A guy that makes sense to me would be Michael Beasley. He'll take up some minutes, but also get to mentor those guys. He was a former lottery pick. I think he could be a really good fit in Atlanta. For me, looking at their whole roster, how it stands right now, Jeremy Lin, I could see being a pretty good 6th, 7th man. I see them getting no more than 30 wins, and I think it's just a year focused on development. I think 30 wins would be ideal for them. Trey Young, I don't see really being in the Rookie of the Year conversation. I see John Collins potentially being in that most improved conversation. I think he's going to have a really good, strong season. And I think really the X factor of their season has got to be Trey Young. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. But a guy that I think is pretty easy to forget about is Kevin Huerter. He did not play in Summer League. He can really stroke the ball. I think he's a guy to keep an eye on just as a building block that many people aren't talking about.
Yeah, I like Tyler Dorsey's game too.
He balled against the Pacers.
Yeah, and at Oregon, that his senior year he came out after.
I think so.
I don't know. That March Madness is last year.
Mr. March.
Yeah, I mean he lit it up, dropping every 3. Kind of similar actually in the game to Trey Young.
Yeah, I mean, did you watch that Pacers-Hawks game? He literally could not miss for like a 2-minute straight. He was just on fire. Yeah, I mean, any last thoughts for the Hawks?
Yeah, I think they're doing their rebuild the right way. A couple of nice pieces to build around in Trey Young and John Collins, but you just got to keep furthering them along in their development. And then this year, again, they're going to get 2 lottery picks, most likely, their own, and then the Mavericks. And then you got to draft well.
Yeah, I mean, I am not out on Trey Young. Some people are worried about him. I think he can be a successful player. I've made it pretty clear. I'm a big fan of John Collins. Dylan, you were a big fan of him coming out of the draft. I wasn't. He really impressed me. And really, I mean, Summer League, that's what I love it. You can watch these second-year guys. Like we saw Brandon Ingram last year, John Collins this year. These guys, they just look so much more experienced. And like they have no business being on the court because they're just that much better. And I expect a big season from John Collins. Anything else? Or are you good?
No, that's all I got for today.
Yeah, so that's going to wrap up the Hawks recap of the offseason. As we get closer, we're going to have more. Like I said in the opening, check out our other teams. If you're a fan of the Hawks, go check out your guys' rivals. Go check out your division. See how you guys are going to stack up. See if we think Trey Young's the best point guard coming out of the draft class. All of that and more. We'll have all 30 teams coming out soon, so make sure you stay tuned. Follow us on Twitter at The Sports Sermon, sports with a Z. That's where you'll find all of the latest content from The Sports Sermon. Like I said, it'll be found on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, and hopefully Spotify in the upcoming days. So, thank you for listening, and go check out those other episodes. We will see you guys later with some college football, NFL, and NBA. Deuces.